Hey there, everyone. So I'm John. I'm going to start this show and I'm going to be talking about crypto and different things that I find important. I've been in crypto and involved in learning about different aspects of it since about 2018. I definitely didn't start investing really until like 2019. I'm one of those people that I truly have to understand something before I really get into it. And one of the things that originally happened is that I was working several different restaurant jobs and I was making pretty good money. And every day that I would be working, I would be constantly working. And then one of the things that I started thinking about is that if I work this hard now, how can I set myself up for the future so that I can be in a better place and then never have to work? That's basically the ideal situation. My goal is to retire young so that way I can do what I truly want to do and follow my passion, right? So Gary Vee and different people like that, different influencers, that's something that they talk about. And so one of the ways that I know that I can achieve that is through financial sovereignty. And financial sovereignty requires being financially stable, being able to do everything myself, not needing anybody else for anything, basically being stable. And I guess that's the goal that everyone has. One of the naive thoughts that I used to have is as a kid, you're always thinking, well, whenever I become an adult, then I will have a better idea or understanding of everything going on, right? So as a kid, you're like, oh man, when I grow up, I will figure all these things out. I grew up in kind of an interesting situation. The majority of my life was spent in Kentucky, but my dad is a college professor, and so I spent a lot of time around these college educated people and some higher level people in different parts of politics and government and different stuff. And so there were a lot of like really intellectual conversations that I was able to be a part of young. And one of the things that I learned as growing up right now, so soon I'll be 30, right? So it's kind of like I'm not an adult yet, right? It's sort of how I feel. And the reason for that is because once I was around 22, 23, that was when I really realized that the secret that adults don't want anybody to know or that they keep hidden is that there is never a point in time when you truly have a full understanding of everything. It's impossible. So kids are always spending this time trying to eventually be an adult, and then when you're an adult, you have everything figured out. But the truth is, adults don't have everything figured out. One of the first things that I started dabbling in when I was working in all these different restaurants is stocks. The reason for that was because I had been listening to a lot of different finance people, and one of the things that they were constantly saying is that, the stock market returns on average like 10 15%, and then eventually with compounding interest, you can get to a place where you are far removed and you don't need anything, and then you can retire. So it's kind of, if you deposit $20, I think it's a week or a month or something like that from the time that you're 18, eventually by like 60, 65, you can retire and have enough money that it can carry you through the rest of the way. So that's Roth IRAs and different kinds of stuff like that. And so I started paying attention to those kinds of things. I started trading stocks. So what I was doing is I would be getting my money, putting money aside, and then buying and trading and selling stocks. And so I was making some good money. I was a part of different forums and groups. So like Wall Street bets type stuff, I wasn't necessarily in on that, but those different types of conversations with a bunch of different people sharing all kinds of different ideas. And so I was starting to get a really good understanding of how to look at some of the financials, how to look at the charts when it comes to stocks and different companies, and how to assess where things are value investing based on needs that there would be in the future. So I was making this money, sometimes 15, 20, 50% on some of these smaller transactions because I'm not wealthy. I don't have a ton of money, right? But I think that that's the way that the majority of people are going. They're trying to get to a place where then they're stable, they don't need anything. So I started to learn about basically like our economy and different like financial things, basically economics and stuff about Keynesian economics and Austrian economics, which is stuff that I can go into a little bit more in other parts. But I started to realize that in the United States and in most countries, the government prints a lot of money. We talk about inflation. The reason that inflation happens is because a bunch of money is printed. So I have this tattoo here, and this is supposed to be Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa was an African king that oftentimes I went to a private school, and it was a small private school, semi private, right? In Kentucky. And one of the things was that I never learned about Mansa Musa. So it wasn't until I was in my 20s, reading basically everything I could get my hands on, when I learned about Mansa Musa. And so Mansa Musa, this African king, super interesting because was one of the most wealthy people in all of human history. He was the group that he was in charge of had a large amount of gold. And so he became a king, had the most gold in human history. Basically, I think Genghis Khan is another one that's up there in that same sort of bracket. And so he was going to go on his pilgrimage to Mecca because he was Muslim and wanted to go on his pilgrimage. One of the things that he did, I believe it was like 16,000 servants, over 500 camels, and each servant had a 15-pound staff made of gold. All of the camels had 5 to 600 pounds of gold dust, and he took all this gold with him, basically like a ton of gold with him. He had more gold left, but he took a ton of gold with him. And what his thinking was is that by giving gold to people that didn't have it, to give money to people that are poor, basically then he could make everybody rich. And so what he did is on his pilgrimage, anytime there was somebody selling something, anytime there was a poor person, anytime that he saw people, he was just constantly giving away all this gold. So this is kind of an interesting concept, right? But this ties back into inflation. So basically what he did was Mansa Musa gave so much gold away in Egypt and in Mecca and all these different places that he traveled to, all the places he passed through, that it actually destroyed the economy and the value of gold in that whole part of the world. And it actually took 12 years for the economy of Egypt to repair itself and for the value of gold to come back because of how much gold he gave away. And the story goes that essentially he gave away all of his gold, so much so that he had to borrow some gold in order to be able to get all the way back home, which I think is interesting. But that ties into inflation because the whole concept there is that he gave away gold, which gold was the thing that was supposed to be valuable. But he gave away so much that then gold became less valuable, which is similar to inflation because our government prints money. And then the money that you have in your pocket, in your bank account, in your checking, savings that you have, the cash in your mattress, is then worth less. And it's the same kind of concept. It's sort of like if you're playing a game of Monopoly and everybody has like 100,000 Monopoly dollars, everybody does. The cost of buying properties from another player is going to be exponentially higher than it would be if everybody on the table had less. So it basically is diluting the value of money. So through learning about stocks and through making this little bit of money that I was making, I believe one year I was able to make $8,000, right? Which to some people is absolutely nothing, and then to somebody that works all the time, $8,000, it's like, oh, that's nice. You made $8,000. I owed a ton of taxes, right? Because it was short-term trading and all kinds of different things. But the thing was that I started thinking about inflation and I started thinking about the devaluing of my money. And then I started to find all these different sorts of calculations for inflation. And then I started thinking if on average year over year by investing in the NASDAQ or in the S&P 500, I'm looking at 15% of value. If inflation is 15% or higher on the things specifically that I would be spending my money on. So this is gas, electricity, like regular things, groceries, right? Stuff like that, which over COVID and during this period of time, the panorama, some products in the stores have gone up like 40%. And one of the things that's interesting is that when CPI data and different metrics that gauge inflation and different stuff miss the mark, sometimes they will change the basket of goods that those metrics are based off of. So it's like having a curve, right, on a test. You take your test, maybe you got a 60%. Maybe the majority of people got 60%. But then you end up with a 90% because you have a curve, right? They changed the weighting of different aspects of that. And so I started thinking about that, and that was where I began my crypto journey. So pretty much I started thinking, wow, made 15% here, made 20% here, made 30% here, but I'm actually breaking even, and then after taxes, losing money. Even though I was making money, I was losing money. Like I was basically bleeding value slowly. Like I was generating money, but I was also losing money. So it's almost like I've got a cup of water with a hole in it, right? And then so I was just thinking about working all the time. And if I'm working all of the time to fill this cup with water, but there's a hole in it, then, how am I gonna achieve what I aspire to achieve later in my life? And so that was when I started seriously looking a little bit more at crypto. Started with Bitcoin because the idea behind Bitcoin is that there's a limited supply. So your value can't be diluted over long periods of time. The crypto market is volatile, price goes up, price goes down. There is a cycle to it. That's a whole nother thing I'm not going to get into right now. But so I started thinking, well, if I'm thinking about retiring in 10 years, then perhaps I can make significantly more money over the long term and protect myself from losing value if I start putting my money into Bitcoin. Once I got into Bitcoin, I started learning about other things in terms of blockchain and some of the different other stuff. And I'm going to go into each one of those things a little bit more. But once I started thinking differently, then I was like, well, over the long stretch of time, my Bitcoin will be worth more than my dollars. And the reason that Bitcoin's price has gone up so exponentially, the reason that at one point you could get several Bitcoin for less than $1, the reason that those things happened is because Bitcoin is a finite supply. There can never be more. So inevitably, over time, the value of Bitcoin will be more. There's also a mechanism inside of Bitcoin that basically about every 4 years, it's a specific number of transactions, but it tends to be around 4 years. The difficulty for processing transactions increases, and the supply of Bitcoin that can come into the supply as a reward for the third parties that are verifying transactions is cut in half. So just by that mechanism and thinking about supply and demand, the demand for Bitcoin will always go higher because there's not enough for everybody. There's not enough for everybody. And because it's finite, it will always retain some value. So it's basically digital money, but its best use case is a store of value over long periods of time. So people equate it to digital gold. So I started thinking about that. I started putting some money into Bitcoin and thinking about that. So I believe it was around 2019, 2020. It was closer. It was after the bear market and during the bull market of crypto, the 2021 area, that hype cycle. And basically I put $5,000 into crypto and I watched it grow to 45K. So I was thinking 10 years down the line, right? So I was accumulating all this different crypto, and I was just like, okay, I'm going to leave it. I'm going to look at it in 10 years. I watched the price run up from 5K to 45K to 50K, and then I also didn't sell any of it. I used some of it, but it was like mediocre how much that I used. And then I literally watched this 45K turn back into 5K. I think it ended up turning into 8K. I think it stayed at around 8K. So this time around, I understand quite a bit more about the crypto market cycles. And every cycle, be it real estate, be it energy, be it like fossil fuels, all of those different markets have their own cycle that works in a specific kind of way based on different macro factors. And so, crypto, once I started to understand it, it took me investing 5 grand, looking at 45 grand, and watching it go back down to 5 grand before I really started paying attention and understanding more of how the market cycle works. I think that we'll have probably 2 or so more cycles before the crypto market reaches a point where it is mainstream and disconnected to regular markets. And then I think it'll become its own ecosystem long term. But basically, this is my introduction into creating some kind of content in this space. And I'm excited for you taking this moment with me. I appreciate you. I'm going to be improving the quality of the content over time, and I'm going to try to do something at least weekly. And we'll see how that goes. Please wish me luck, and I appreciate all of you, and I hope that everybody does amazing this time around. And really, I just want to create a community where I am educating myself to help educate you all, and impact or input from you all will help me grow, and hopefully we can all grow together. And we'll see. But I hope everybody's having a good day. Best of luck, positivity, and wealth and fortune for all of you. And fortune favors the bold, that's what they say. Thank you for taking this time. I look forward to seeing you on the next one.